Okay, so we'll start now. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, audible.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so we'll be starting the webinar on India March for Science and its significance for researchers. Before going into the main session of the webinar, I find it is useful to very briefly look just at the backdrop. So today is 3rd August 2022. Yesterday, 2nd August 2022, was 161st birth anniversary of Acharya Prafula Chandra Roy. All of us know his name. He is known as the father of Indian chemistry. But what I believe, he is much more than that. He is also a pioneer of the modern science education and research in India. Also, he is a great philanthropist, a great social worker, and actually he is one of the leading figure. Whenever there is famine or flood, he with his students and team, he reached to the spot and with the relief activities. So he is also a great patron of the Swadeshi movement and the Indian revolutionary freedom struggle. He is also the British government. They also mentioned him as the revolutionary in the garb of a scientist. So, and the most contextual and important contribution standing today is that he is the person who strong and stubbornly practiced the scientific temperament the way we know it today in his life almost 100 years back, and he also inculcated it into the society and among his students. So he is known for his great scientific discoveries. More than 150 papers is there against his name. But what we feel is a more important contribution is that he paved the way for science and scientific thinking on which the progress India has made so far could have been possible. So I believe that is the greatest contribution of him. And if we look at his character, the essence, what I feel is that a very deep realization and adherence to the ethics of science and truth, which actually gave into him the simplicity he is known for and the love for fellow people, based on which he actually built and lived his entire life. And he inculcated a dream where the education and research will have its dignified position in a dignified society. So just before starting the webinar, it is good to recall how far we are from his cherished and noble dream and what we need to do. So with this backdrop, I think it is good to start the webinar now. We are very happy to have Professor Soumitro Banerjee among us as the main speaker. All the friends and the council members of DRSO who are in the meeting room, all the friends who are there watching live in YouTube. And of course, I am happy to say that Akil Murali, who is also the national president of DRSO, is in the meeting. So now we'll go to the main session of the webinar, and I request Akil Murali, the national president of DRSO, to address the house. Over to you, Akil.
Thank you, RK. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes. A warm good evening to all of you. RK has already mentioned as to why we are here. It's a very momentous occasion for DRSO to be organizing this national webinar on the occasion of to convey to the research scholars across India about the significance of India March for Science. DRSO has been part of the India March for Science ever since the movement is initiated in the country. And again, it is another opportunity for us to take the message to research scholars. So I'll say a few things about DRSO for those who are not aware of it. We are Democratic Research Scholars Organization, and we have been working among the research scholars for a decade now. And we work with the aim of upholding the democratic rights and also for the welfare of researchers across the country. We know that research is essential to the well-being of education, not only education but also the advancement of every modern country. In India also, research has played a very role in our advancement. But we also know that as a community, research scholars are one of the most vulnerable sections, especially in the education field. Research scholars have faced with numerous issues. So DRSO has been working among research scholars to unify this community, which has not always been united. But we are also an organization which work with an eye towards social commitment. In addition to all the activities that we do with the research or do by organizing the research scholars, DRSO also believes in giving back to society, because essentially uh, the society creates the new knowledge, and by giving back to society, we are only advancing the knowledge of our future generations, and that's always been the way knowledge is developed. Uh, so, with the same, DRSO has been doing a lot of activities, and including national webinars and myth-busting programs and other programs wherever DRSO activists have been residing and working. DRSO is also very committed to the cause of India Master Science, because we know India Master Science is a movement that aims to protect not only science as it is in the name, but also knowledge, advancement, and research in every field. And we also completely believes in the ideals of India Master Science. So that's why I mentioned earlier that it is a very happy occasion for us to be part of the India Master Science and also host this national webinar, so that we can reach more research scholars. We can get the message across to more research scholars, and we can ask them to be part of this very important movement that is a part of a worldwide movement. Thank you, Arya. It's all. Now I call upon our General Secretary of DRSO, Arya Das, to moderate the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Akhil. So, as Akhil said, we will be entering the most awaited session, where our main speaker will speak. So, just to introduce this session, I think it is important to recall that research scholars begin to be organized. It is 1 decade from 2012. The entire academic community that begin to be organized is 5 years from 2017. So, as many of you know, just very briefly in 1 or 2 lines, that something happened in 2017. Actually, that is happening for a long time, that the policymakers, the politicians, the people in power, they are continuously disregarding the warnings and the voices of the scientists and the academic community. The voice of the academic community is initially that is limited to some sense lobbying in writing articles. The people who are there in the scientific committees and scientific academies, they are giving so many warnings about climate change, about pollution, and so many other things worldwide, and that is being completely neglected for some certain interest. And eventually in 2017, the academic community over the entire world decided that this way of doing things is not enough. It is important to reach to the public, because the public, the society, is the ultimate stakeholder, and we need to rally them with the voice of science, and for this we need to go to them. This is how the first March for Science occurred in the Earth Day, 22nd April 2017. All over the world, around in 600 cities in all the continents, I think except Antarctica, in all the continents, the March for Science took place. In India, because there had been exams around that time, as you all know, so the date was shifted and we did it in August. And the August, we are conducting the March for Science every year. And as Akhil also mentioned, DRSO has been one of the main organizers who organize the research scholars community for the March for Science. And the research scholars continue to play a very important role. And this year, DRSO became a national platform. It has a national council, and it has starting a paradigm shift in the scholar movement. So there is an additional responsibility to the research scholars for this year's March for Science. This is particularly important because, as you know, last 2 years it had been pandemic, and during the pandemic, all the activities on the street was actually stopped. The academia was almost closed. There has been a lot of crisis the research scholars has been facing for long, and it has intensified. The new education policy 2020 that actually taken down a disaster on the entire science and academia, including school to research. So, and also in 2022 is the first time after pandemic when we will be rallying on the streets. So this is a very significant moment that we have to make a voice for this. So in this spirit, we are organizing this webinar to take the call to the entire community. I am very happy and honored that Professor Soumitro Banerjee, who is also the chairperson of the advisory council of DRSO, in his busy schedule, he kindly agreed to deliver his speech, and he is here among us in the meeting. To introduce him, he is an eminent physicist who has many awards. He is also the member of all the main science academies and engineering academy of India, and also he is awarded the prestigious Bhatnagar Prize, which is the highest science award in India. And he is one of the main leaders who organize the March for Science on behalf of the academic community. So it is the best, it is the best thing that we have him in the meeting. And I will now request Professor Banerjee to deliver his speech. It is over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Das, for organizing this program. Actually, this is the need of the hour, because as you understand, science is advancing by leaps and bounds, and so it is time to celebrate the advancement of science. Over the last few years, there has been momentous discoveries. We have found the Higgs boson. We have discovered gravitational waves. Now a new vista of astronomy has opened up, gravitational wave astronomy. We are now reaching out to Mars, to the moon, and science is advancing. And so it is natural that the scientific community would celebrate the advancement of science. And as research scholars, you should have a bright future ahead of you, because it is supposed to be a golden time for science. But unfortunately, this rosy picture that I have been painting before you, this may not completely be true. And naturally, when you scholars look at your future, you have to think about the health of the scientific enterprise in India. We have to worry about whether or not it's in a very healthy shape, because your future depends on the future of science in India. You have committed your life to science. Now, in that sense, I would say there are points to worry about. And it is not only in India, as Dr. Arvind was saying, that it has been something that is happening all over the world. As you know, in 2017, the March for Science was started. And the point was essentially that the leader of the United States, at that time it was Trump, he was denying the scientific facts that the climate is changing and it is due to man-made effects. Basically, exploitation of our natural resources, mindless exploitation of natural resources is leading to, scientists are saying that, and the ruler of that country was denying that. So the scientists called for a march. So the march was essentially something to do with, at the time, to do with a specific problem faced by scientists in the United States. But when the call was given, it was found that scientists all over the world responded, and they also took out the march, even in countries where this problem was not there. Germany was a signatory to the Paris Accord, France was obviously, and most of the European countries were, but in all countries, scientists came out to the streets on this March for Science. Now, why? The reason is actually a bit deeper. It is felt worldwide that in some way or other, science is under attack. It is no longer having the patronage that it used to get. It is under attack from various directions. For example, the financial support for science is reducing in most countries. And as you complete your PhD and apply for postdoc, you will immediately realize the problem that has happened. Postdoc positions have become difficult to come. So funding is one issue. Governments in general are taking decisions after decisions without bothering about what science says, or as the communique from the March for Science worldwide said, what evidence-based science says. Science actually rests on evidence. We believe things only if we see evidence. So all science is evidence-based, but they understood that point, that the governments are making decisions in complete disregard to the scientific facts. And as a result, decisions after decisions are actually causing harm to the society. So even though those countries did not have the same problem that was faced by the scientists of the United States, they also came out to the streets because they felt that it is not only their problem. The problem is general. In general, science is under attack. Now in India, the problem is even more deeper. It is because those issues that science is no longer getting the support that it used to get. Scientists are no longer being heard the way they used to get. These problems were there in India also. We know, we understand. But in much more dramatic ways. In most advanced or advancing countries, the support, the financial support for education and for scientific research is much more than that in India. Most countries, most advancing or advanced countries, spend to the tune of 3% to 3.5% of their GDP on research and development. Some countries spend more. For example, South Korea spends about 4.2%. And there are some countries who spend on specific areas of scientific research. For example, Cuba spends a lot on medical research. But the point is that in most of these either advanced or advancing countries, the spending on education is to the tune of 3% of the gross domestic product. How much in totality the country is producing? Our economic activities are producing value, and that value can be measured. So we have a measure called gross domestic product, and most countries keep aside a section of that money, a portion of that money, so that science and technology can advance, because they understand that the future rests on advancement of science and technology. Future of technology depends on today's advancement of basic sciences, and therefore in many countries this support is there. Those countries, scientists were protesting, calling for even more increase. But in our country, while in those countries the support was to the tune of 3%, in our country it was to the tune less than 0.8% of budget. So you see, there is a wide gap. In India, science stands nowhere in terms of governmental priority. As a result, and moreover, it has been structured in a rather peculiar way. In most countries, you will find research is conducted in the universities. That means research and teaching, education goes hand in hand in the same place. In universities are the cradle of scientific research. But in our country, there are certain research institutions and there are certain universities. Research institutions where mainly research happens, the CSIR labs, the DAE labs, where only research happens with very little teaching component. And in universities, they're supposed to be doing research as well as teaching. But since the financial support from the government is abysmally small, therefore, research environment, ambience, infrastructure does not exist in most universities. Now remember, it is this scientific environment that you people are going to enter. You are now a part of that as a student, but after some time, you will become a part of that as an insider. And if the health of the system is not good, then you will face problems. So that is one aspect. The financial support was small, as a result of which the research, even though there are excellent people in India, scientifically minded, willing to do research, willing to devote their lives to research, but still they were helpless because adequate infrastructure was not there. And the same situation is with education in general. The catchment area, you see, a river has a catchment area. The precipitation over a certain area goes into a river that ultimately flows through the river. In a similar way, science in any country, its catchment area are the people who are now being in school, who are now being educated in school and college. So if the school and college education is not up to the mark, then obviously the input to the scientific research will not be up to the mark. And that's another problem we have, because the support for education has also been very low. In most countries, or I would say you don't need to look at countries. In our country also, there has been many education policies. One education policy was formulated in 1968. Another education policy was formulated in 1986. It was slightly modified in 1988 or 89. And then we have a new education policy that has been tabled in 2020. In all these education policies, the policy documents committed to spend to the tune of 10% of the GDP for education. But notice the time, 1968 to now, even though the policy documents say that 10% of the GDP will be spent on education, it is yet less than 3%. So we can easily understand the crumbling condition of our schools, no teacher, no non-teaching staff, toilets unusable, blackboards unusable, this condition, no laboratory. This condition is happening because there is no support. And the same situation in the universities. So education and science, since independence, has been neglected. So we had this problem that was one of the focal points of the protest in the European countries, Australia, Japan, and everywhere. In our country, it was far more acute. More acute was the problem that now there is a renewed attempt to undermine science. Not only science, it is scientific development. The way science teaches us to think rationally. There is a renewed attempt to undermine rationality. And that was being felt in 2017 also, because, you know, a couple of years back in one of the Indian science congresses, there was a claim that ancient India had aeroplanes. Some education minister said that Darwin's theory is wrong because he has never seen a monkey dropping its tail and becoming a man. Therefore, Darwin's theory is wrong. And therefore, he recommended that Darwin's theory should not be taught. The Prime Minister of the country said that the head of Ganesha is a proof that there was plastic surgery in the ancient times, and so on and so forth. All these things were propagated, and we could figure out that now rationality, scientific bent of mind, these are under attack. So it was not only science was under attack, rationality on which science stands, that was under attack. So that is why in 2017, we responded to the call given by the international scientists. And as Arjun said, that since April was not suitable for us because there's an exam time in India, so we decided to do it in August, and it was there in, it occurred in almost 100 cities and towns in India. So that was a huge response because everybody was feeling something needs to be done. Now, since then, every year, scientists have been protesting against this. So while we are celebrating the developments of science, we are advertising what science can do and has been doing, what change in people's lives science can bring. We are telling that, but at the same time, we are also making the point science needs support. Science needs governmental support. Without that, science cannot flourish. Not only science, education also. Now, this has been going on since 2017, but over the last 2 years, we could not take out this much for science because of, as you know, pandemic. There was lockdown and no public gathering was permitted. But now things are returning to normal. So it is possible to take out public gatherings. But notice, in the meantime, some things have happened. As I started by saying that the whole thing started with the government denying that there is a problem with the environment in the United States. What is the status of environment in India? There has been a report published a couple of months back where an environmental panel, international environmental panel, studied the environmental health of 180 countries. And they have published a report. And in that report, India's position is 180th, which means the last, worst. Now, how could India get itself to such a condition? Because its government has also been denying the problems of the environment. Its government has also been promoting wanton destruction of the environment and ignoring scientific advice. So we have this problem. Now this recently there was a summit in Glasgow, as you know, and in that all the national leaders came together, wondering what can be done to save the planet, because it is inching towards the tipping point, and something needs to be done. Everybody was worrying about that. How much are they really worrying and how much they're talking? That's a different issue. But in our country, as you understand, it's the worst. It's the worst situation because it has all along been ignoring scientific advice. Now, if you come to the situation of the scientific funding in India, you will find that even more acute situation. I said that in 2017 itself, India was spending 0.8%. And after that, you have heard the rhetoric about Make in India, this, that. We have heard about that. Obviously, that cannot happen without adequate support for science and technology. But what has actually happened on ground? Let me cite a few examples. Within the last 1 month, a few things happened. You may have noticed that. There are science and engineering academies which sort of discuss various areas of science, promote certain scientific endeavors, which advise the government on scientific policies. And there are science academies, there are engineering academies. One engineering academy, INAE, Indian National Academy. And all these receive their funding from the government through the DST, Department of Science. A month back, the government announced that it is stopping the funding for the Indian National Academy of Engineering. Why? Because it says that it should now act like a company. Indian National Science Academy of Engineering, Academy, it's a research-based organization of scientists. I mean, scientists who work in the field of engineering. The government is advising that it should act almost like a company, raising its own money. Where can scientists raise their money? It is somewhat similar to the IITs now are being asked to raise their own money from their own resources. Where are their resources? Students. So the IITs are raising the students' fees, and as you possibly know, there is a big movement right now going on at IIT Bombay, where students are up against further increase, but the government has mandated no, IIT should run on its own. It should not. Government will not support. In the similar vein, I mean, the IITs and such institutions more or less should become like private institutions, charging large fees, running like companies. In the same vein, the government advised that INAE should also act like a company. The new GST rules have come. And so far, the scientific instruments that are used in scientific laboratories, academic laboratories in universities, these had to pay 5% GST. While on other things, there's 18% GST. So whenever we wrote project proposals to bring some instrument, then we accounted for that 5% of GST to be paid to the government. Now, again, over the last 1 month, the GST rules have been changed. And now, the scientific instruments will also have to pay 18% GST. Which means the project proposals that have been submitted and have been approved with that money, that PI will not be able to procure that instrument because the money is not there. With the cost of the equipment, the money is not there to pay 18% GST, and unless you pay 18% GST, you cannot procure that instrument. So it is like that. So effectively, the support for science has gone down effectively because much of the funding for scientific projects that goes into procuring scientific instruments, and if 18% GST has to be paid, effectively the funding has gone down by that amount. And as you know, that during the pandemic period, the worst hit have been the research scholars, because you could not do your research, you could not go to the laboratories. Those who are working on theoretical areas, they could somehow manage, but without meeting their supervisor, without discussion. And those who are doing experimental work had nothing to do. Basically, they had no way other than just remaining idle. And naturally, in order to finish their PhD, they will need extra time, and naturally there has to be some extra time is not the issue. Issue is that there has to be extra fellowships. There has been no signal from the government as yet that this will be. So this way, you will see that the effective support for science is actually going down year after year. And there are certain implications of that. Notice, the effective support for education is going down. As a result, new universities are not being built, new colleges are not being built, new departments are not opening, and therefore the number of new job openings being created is less. Only those who are retiring, that many new people can go in. So what about your job market? You definitely want to become a faculty member someday, but you will face an uphill task because that number is going down. That is one problem from the education perspective. from those who will ultimately somehow manage to get a job will definitely want to do science. And doing science means science today needs money. You need equipment. You need to procure stuff. And for that also the money is going down. But not everywhere. That's important. Not everywhere. There are certain areas which are now being opened, which are not there earlier. For example, 10 years back, did you ever hear of research on Gomutra? You never heard. But now you are hearing. Research proposals are being invited on the utility of Panchgavya. So while the research or financial support for research in other areas are going down, there is new funding in these areas. About a couple of months back, the government announced that it will now initiate research on a new area. What is that new area? Now, as you know, you can take a swab from any person and analyze the DNA. And through that, we have been able to do a lot of research on our ancestry, on the various people in India. There's been a great advancement. And the government announced that in the government lab, they will now start a new research area by procuring instruments for DNA analysis. For what purpose? To analyze the racial purity of various ethnic groups. It's announcement. It's not something I'm saying. It's an announcement. As we know, none of us have anything like pure blood. We are all mixed. We are all mixed. The whole Indian population is mixed. There have been various times in which there have been influxes of people from different places. The first one was, of course, out of Africa. And then there have been further influxes, and we have been completely mixed. And now they are starting a program to analyze the racial purity. Does this strike a chord? Does this sound familiar? Exactly. During the reign of Hitler, during the advent of fascism in Germany, exactly this was the term, racial purity. So research is now being initiated in areas that are completely unscientific, while the support for science in scientific areas is going down. So while we celebrate the developments of science, we have to worry about these. Science is not validly neutral. There is something called science, which depends only on evidence and which has very clear-cut idea on what is evidence and what is not. And on the other hand, there are unscientific ideas, belief systems, superstitions, bigotry, all these are there. So these are two opposite poles. And science can flourish only by defeating the other pole. Without that, science cannot flourish. But now we see a renewed attempt to make the other side flourish. And as a result, science is going down. Now here, by science, I'm not only meaning what are traditionally called the sciences. Physics, chemistry, mathematics, biology. The social sciences are as much science as any other branch of science, because they employ exactly the same methodology, proposing hypotheses, testing hypotheses, statistical techniques, all that are exactly the same, and therefore they are also as much science as any other branch of science. So I am including all of them. What I'm saying is that solid science, hard science, rigorous science is no longer finding that patronage, and instead what is finding patronage are anti-science, unscientific ideas. And this is something that the scientific community is very worried about. Now, on top of that, in 2020, a new education policy has been proposed. And if you really go through the policy, you might not be able to see or read between the lines, but you will notice that repeatedly a particular phrase appears. That phrase is that they are trying to introduce something called Indian knowledge systems in the curriculum. And now that curriculum, what will be taught, those things are now being framed, and we are hearing from various sources. For example, the Karnataka government has already prepared its curriculum, what will be taught in colleges and universities as a course on Indian knowledge systems. And other states are also preparing. Probably Uttarakhand has also prepared this kind of a document. And what we see in those documents are completely unscientific, completely imaginary ideas. Some imaginary romantic vision about about ancient India, in which aeroplanes were flying in the skies. There were stem cell research. There was plastic surgery and whatnot. Some chief ministers said that there must have been television and internet during the time of the Mahabharata. Otherwise, how could Sanjay give a running commentary of the war to the blind king? So on and so forth. And those things are now finding their way into textbooks. And the Karnataka government has, for example, proposed that a book that is the source book of what is known in India as casteism, that will become a compulsory reading material for the students. So this is where things are going. So unscientific things are being introduced in the curricula. As a result, what is known as scientific temper, scientific bent of mind, that will take a beating. And naturally, when you students, the research scholars, look at the future, you will get into an education system that will have these, that will no longer have the kind of, or I would say, whatever very little amount of governmental support that universities enjoyed, even that will go. That is being replaced by a business model. Scientific research, whatever support it used to get, that was, as I said, abysmally small compared to that in other countries. Even that is now going. So what kind of research environment will you get into when you complete your PhD? You have to worry about that. And it is for these reasons that the scientists are now protesting against these measures that are being taken by the government. So the March for Science is, on the one hand, an occasion to celebrate the developments of science, but at the same time, it is also an occasion where scientists raise these points. Take it to the people. Take it to the people's court. And on that vein, I would request the research scholars community should also be a part of this Month for Science, wherever you are. It will happen in almost all the cities and towns of India. So wherever you are, you can take part in it in your place. If it so happens that if it is not there, it is not happening, or your institution is in a place which is away from any of the major cities, then also you can stand with a placard and take pictures and post on social media, so that everybody is expressing, everybody in the scientific community expressing this content. While we are celebrating the advancement of science, we are also expressing this content. This advancement of science has to continue, and in order for it to continue, the proper environment needs to be created and nurtured. And the way things are going, that is going against that. So I would request all the research scholars to consider these issues and be a part of the march for science, be a soldier for the cause of science. I will end with this. If there are questions, then we'll take this.
Thank you, Professor, for this very important speech. It is more of a speech. It is the details actually where you are standing and what we need to do. And actually, what I felt is that as scientists and scholars, we are trying to take science and knowledge ahead, and only doing research is not going to help. We also have to fight the obstacles before that. So this is why this March for Science is important, and thanks for the call. So next, there will be the interaction session where the scholars present, who are present in the meeting room as well as who are watching it online, they can place their questions. For moderating this session, I will call Probin Mahato, who is treasurer of DRSO, to take questions from scholars in the house and online. Probin, over to you.
Thank you, Arya, Dr. Arga. So those who are in the meeting, those who have any question, they put their question one by one by unmuting themselves. Is there any question?
Okay, so I will start with one question. As we are also marching for science, also at times we have to take a call on our own career decisions. For example, the university system is neglected. That came from your speech. And also, there are certain governmental rules that is being imposed that you have to do this kind of science, that kind of science. So as a scholar or as a scientist, for example, when I'm transitioning myself from the position of a scholar to a faculty, what should be my position? For example, if in some place they are compelling me to teach some kind of pseudoscience, so what should I do? I mean, I think this is somehow related to the ethical stand-up that March for Science is taking, and this ethics should be reflected in my personal life also. So this is why this question.
Yes, this is a dilemma that you people might face some years down the line, because the changes in curricula that are being brought in, when you become faculty members, you might have to teach those. And if that material is not scientific, then you will face an ethical dilemma. Do I teach this? Well, in that situation, my own advice will be to remain true to science. whatever you understand to be truth, stick to that and convey that to the students. If the next generation understands how to distinguish between truth and falsehood, if they are able to decide for themselves what to believe and what not to believe, then you do not have to tell what is true and what is false. If something that is false is taught, they will understand that it is false. So it is more important for students to understand how to distinguish between truth and falsehood. And so when you become teachers, remain faithful to that position of science. The way changes in the curriculum are happening, yes, I do see that some years down the line, there will be unscientific material in the curriculum and you will face this ethical dilemma. So that's my suggestion on this. But the first thing to do is to resist these changes. The question came with the assumption that these changes will happen, and so we'll face a ethical dilemma. My suggestion is, let's just work together to stop it.
Yes.
Okay.
Sir.
Any other question from the house here?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, so I have a just technical question. So, so after this March for Science, will there be a committee that will visit the or academic committee from March for Science that will go to the or visit the parliament or something like that, or a higher education committee to present our demands or the March for Science demands?
Oh, well, now the situation in Delhi is rather peculiar. Gathering anywhere is banned. So, and one cannot go to the parliament, nor can one go to the education ministry to submit a memorandum. So what will actually happen is that in different states, mainly the state capitals, where the March for Science will happen, in each of these places, a memorandum will be submitted by the March for Science organizing committees to the respective governor of the state, because the governor is the representative of the center in the state. So through the governor, we will have to send the representation or the written material to the appropriate ministry. So that is what we have to do. There's no other way. If they allowed us to go to the parliament or the ministry to talk to them, to submit a memorandum, then we could have, but they're not, they don't permit this.
Yeah, thank you.
In Delhi, there is only one place where they allow some people to gather together. That's called Jantar Mantar, or some place like that. And this place is heavily barricaded. If 100 people gather, there will be 1,000 policemen. So it is a peculiar situation in Delhi.
Yeah.
Any more question? So there are two questions in YouTube. Actually, the first question is why basic science and the social science are more neglected. And there is another question, why after C.V. Raman, no one get Nobel Prize in India, why? And there is another question is from Keshwan Subramaniam. His question is, does support means money, or how, or basically what exactly do you mean by support to science? These are the three questions.
Okay. The answer to the first question is a myopic vision short-sightedness of our national leaders. You see, every time there is a Indian Science Congress, it happens on the 1st of January every year, or the first week of January, and the Prime Minister of the country speaks in the inaugural session. And there, the Prime Minister expounds the vision for science. And it has been the tradition. It's been the tradition for the last 30, 40 years. So governments have come, governments have gone, governments have changed, but every time the Prime Minister goes and gives a talk, and in that there is hardly any mention of the social sciences and the fundamental curiosity-driven basic sciences. Science is lauded only in the sense of producing some marketable commodity, new marketable commodities. I'm basically trained as an engineer, so I definitely won't talk against engineering. Definitely engineering is a very important thing, but engineering can flourish only if the basic idea coming from fundamental science first comes. Imagine nowadays you are using pen drives everywhere, right? The basic thing on which the pen drive works was a basic science discovery, sometime in the 1950s and 60s. So unless that happened, scientific engineering development cannot happen. Today, our whole society rests on electricity. And the first person who was working on the relationship between electricity and magnetism, Michael Faraday, somebody asked him, what is the use of all this? Now do you understand the foolishness of that question? What is the use of all this? Now this whole society rests on electricity. But at that time it was fundamental science. So today what is fundamental science? Much later it can spin some technological development. But the leaders do not understand that. And as a result, the support for basic sciences, support for social sciences is very low. And this is a problem. The second question was, I mean, here I'm including social sciences in the same bracket within science, and the support for social science is actually very low. The second question, if I recall correctly, was why didn't anybody after C.V. Raman get Nobel Prize? Well, it's a difficult question, but just ponder on this issue, that it is not only C.V. Raman, there were many others in India who were world-renowned. Their names have been proposed for the Nobel Prize multiple times, including Satyendranath Bose, Meghnad Saha. Somehow Jagadish Chandra Bose and Prafulla Chandra Ray's name did not feature there, but they were also of equal renown. And there were other people. But notice they all did their science pre-independence. It was a time when their science was driven by their nationalistic feeling. Their feeling, their urge to establish India as a scientific nation, to show those white-skinned Europeans that we are no less. So their urge was to establish India as an advanced country, scientifically advanced country. So they gave everything to their research. But now, science has more or less become just one career opportunity. One could have become a bank employee, one has become a scientist. It's just a career opportunity. It was not like that at the time. But now, if you take science as just a career, then there's a limit to which you can go. Because whatever you are doing only to further a career, nothing more. So that is why you will see that we are producing good science, but not outstanding science. India is producing good science. Indian scientists are publishing in high quality journals, but that's it. We are no longer getting anybody after whom equations will be named like the Saha equation or the Bose-Einstein statistics or the Raman effect. We are no longer getting people like that because science has become for us just a key. That's my take on this. There are many other issues here, but today there's no time to discuss in details on this particular issue. Third question, could you repeat what it was? Praveen, could you repeat what it was, the third question? There was another question.
Question was that what is the meaning of to support science?
Oh, to support science means a few things. Science happens in the universities and in the research labs. So it is not only money. The university, their administration, their ambience, their infrastructure, everything has to be such that fosters science. Universities and the research establishments like the CSI labs, DA labs, and one of the major contributors to that is definitely financial support. Because without financial support, infrastructure cannot be built, labs cannot be built, appropriate number of faculty members cannot be recruited, and without the appropriate teacher-student ratio, the students cannot be taught appropriately. So support for science includes all this. Support for science, therefore, ultimately boils down to how much financially the government is supporting science. Scientific research as well as education, where scientific fields of education, where scientific research takes place, like the universities. So when I mean support for scientific research, it is this.
Okay, so, thank you. There is another question. Ilsad Haq, only 19% female scientists representing or working in research institute. What measures should be taken to change this scenario?
See, as I said, in India, the sciences develop or scientific establishments have developed in a way that is different from that in Europe or in America, where most research happens in universities, but in India, that is not the case. I completely agree with the questioner that this situation needs to be changed. Universities need to be adequately supported so that their level is increased, because most of the students are educated in the universities. They are not educated in the research labs. So if they are educated in a research environment, if they do their bachelor's and master's degree in a research environment, they obviously understand science better. So that is something that needs to be created. And for that, again, what is needed is the understanding of the government that what is going on, the way things are happening, things have been built, is not the appropriate way. Our universities need to flourish. But if the government does not understand it on its own, then it is our job to make them understand. And that is exactly why we are doing this March for Science. We are making these points that financial support for science has to be increased, but also we're making the point that financial support for the universities have to increase. It is not only the elite institutions that should be supported. Nowadays, there has been a new concept, the institutions of eminence. Some institutions being identified as institutions of eminence, they will be supported, the others will not be. Peculiar concept. The others should be, so that they can also become institutions of eminence. While it is a peculiar concept that only a handful number will be selected for excellence, the others may go to hell. So when I say that the situation needs to change, yes, you are right, situation needs to change. But yes, these are the points that the March for Science is making, trying to make before the government.
Okay, thank you, sir. I think there is no any question from the house, and also there is no any question in. Yes.
Oh yeah, I have one question.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So regarding this Indian knowledge system, as you told that some like Karnataka government, they are making their curriculum. So for like IITs or in this type of institutes, what will be the scenario for regarding the Indian knowledge system, like change in, is there be like that type of curriculum or subject that in masters or what will be the scenario? So regarding this Indian knowledge system, because in IT Kharagpur also there is a department like Center for Excellence in Indian knowledge system. So that is my question.
Yes, IIT Kharagpur has taken the lead. They have already created a Center for Excellence on Indian knowledge systems with full funding from the government. And the other IITs have not done anything like that. But you see, after the new education policy was introduced, sometime in 2021, I suppose it was September 2021, that the ICERs and IITs received a note from the government or education ministry that there has to be a discussion session organized in collaboration with Bharatiya Shikshan Mandal. And our institute, ICER, also organized this kind of a discussion meeting. And it has happened in most IITs and ICERs. And the person who came from the Bharatiya Shikshan Mandal clearly said that now your task, I mean, so far our task mainly, as we understood, was to do research, means look to the future, change the future. But the main message that came was no, look to the past. Find out what was there and tell your students that. Now, one important point that I would like to make is that and in India, there was really a great development of science in the ancient times. When I say great, it is great compared to the development of science elsewhere in the world of that time. It is in India that zero was discovered. The place value system of writing numbers was discovered. Algebra, trigonometry, actually, whatever trigonometry you learned in school, whatever trigonometric formulae you learned in school, those things actually developed in India. So the first sine table was in Greece, but later developments happened in India. Much astronomical development happened in India. If you go to the Jantar Mantar in Jaipur, you see some examples of the instruments they used for naked eye observation of the planetary and the stellar positions. That knowledge was developed in India. You know Ayurveda. There was a lot of development. You know the names of Charaka, Sushruta. In fact, Sushruta was the first person who did surgery. We do not know exactly how successful was he, how much did his patients get cured, but at least we know from Sushruta Samhita, which is a written material, that he used certain surgical instruments. Those things also we know. So he was, let's say, the first surgeon in the world. So those developments happened. That's reality. And nobody is saying that this did not happen. What the problem is that they are not projecting these as the thing to be included in any history of science course. The problem is that they are proposing the ancient knowledge to be taught to modern students. For example, there is a white paper published on introduction of Vedic mathematics in the mathematics courses. Now, many important mathematicians have pointed out that there was nothing called this Vedic mathematics, because in the Vedic times there was the zero and the place value system had not been discovered. So Vedic time, there was no zero, there was no place value system. So our number system had not developed. So if you talk about Vedic mathematics, basically the modern mathematics has to be abandoned. But then somebody wrote a book called Vedic Mathematics out of his own thinking, calling it Vedic. It has obviously the modern number systems and some calculational techniques, some small sutras for some quick calculation. For example, how do you find the cube of 15? So there is a quick formula to calculate the cube of 15. But if you ask, can you calculate the cube of 16? Is the same formula? No. For 16, another formula. For 17, another formula. So obviously, these can be, this is not even good mathematics, because that doesn't teach you the way mathematics teaches you to think. These are just some calculational procedures that too develop not at the time of Vedas. What they're saying is that teach that to the modern students. For example, there was a metallurgical technique called the production of wood steel, WOOTZ. You see, when you extract iron from iron ore, there's a lot of impurities mixed with it, mainly phosphorus, sulfur, and things like that, which needs to be taken out by oxidation. So they found a way of oxidizing that molten iron to take out those things, and so there was that procedure. But that procedure has been enormously improved now. Now we have blast furnaces, we have far better steel. But if you now say that, okay, in the ancient time we had this technique and therefore the modern metallurgists should study this technique, then it is no longer good science. In the days of the Ayurveda, the theoretical structure was every disease is caused by three things: Vayu, Pitta, and Kapha. And the disbalance of these three things cause all the diseases. Now we know that this is not fact. And so if you teach these to the medical students, will they be more wiser? No. So whatever real development happened at that time can be taught as a history of science course. I will be the first person to support that. But what they are proposing is to include that in the curriculum itself as knowledge. This is what was known in the ancient time, and this is what should be taught now. This is the problem. Because what Kanada wrote, modern atomic theory is not that. Even though he may have written about, if you break things, it will become smaller and smaller, and ultimately beyond a certain level, you cannot break it. So, Kamada said in India, in Greece, Democritus and Leucippus said almost the same thing. But we know that after Dalton and after we have been able to break the atom, it is no longer the same atomic theory. So we cannot teach exactly the same atomic theory to our students, but we should tell them that yes, there was, for that time, that concept was more advanced. Should be part of the history of science, but not a part of the regular science curriculum. That's important.
Okay, thank you, sir. It is almost 8:30, so we cannot take more questions. So if someone have any question, they can mail us. That is mail.drs@gmail.com, and then we will try to reply their questions. Okay. Now over to Dr. Arya Das.
Thank you, Praveen, for moderating the session. And thanks all for the questions and the interaction. And of course, thank you, Professor, again for the discussion during the interaction. So we are at the last part of the webinar. So I will request DRSO National President Akil Murali to make some announcement on behalf of the organization. Over to you, Akil.
Yes, Arya. We had a very important seminar, webinar actually, where I'm sure all of us have been convinced of why India March for Science is important for not only science but for the development of knowledge in India. So we have a few announcements on the part of DRSO. DRSO in start of this India March for Science, we have thought about starting a signature campaign, an All India signature campaign, starting from August 5th. Some of the demands that we have raised as part of the signature campaign would be equal importance to social sciences and humanities. We know that government talks about development of sciences a lot, even though we just heard what the situation is, but in the government doesn't even talk about social sciences and humanities. So in the research sector, we also know that without humanities or development of humanities and social sciences, the things or the development of knowledge, holistic knowledge is not possible. So that's one of the demands we are keeping. Then we also seen how fees being regularly hiked in institutions like IITs and ISRs, and also institutions that do not come in the media. So we are demanding withdrawal in the fee hike, and we are demanding a fellowship hike for all scholars, and we are also demanding a fellowship extension. This is particularly important in the backdrop of the COVID-19 pandemic. We know that for the past 2 years, in many places, the scholars have not been able to do any kind of research. But though the UGC has allowed for extensions, they have not actually said that these extensions will be with fellowships. So DRSO is demanding that these extensions should be along with a fellowship, and we also demand that 3% of the GDP and the budget be set aside for research activities. Another of our demands will be stop disparity in disbursement of fellowship among scholars. We know that some scholars get some scholarships have like probably say 8,000, and other scholars have probably 10,000. But we are demanding that this disparity should be stopped, because we know that research is important in for everyone, and the effort and time required for everyone is also the same. So there is no sense in having disparate amounts for different scholars. So that's about the signature campaign. We hope that DRSO calls upon all the scholars watching to engage in this signature campaign. And if all of us come together, I'm sure that we'll be able to collect at least 5,000 signatures by August 15th. That's a very reasonable target. And we'll be submitting the signatures to the Prime Minister of the country. So considering the importance of the demands that we have raised, and also the situation that we are going through. I once again request that the signature campaign be taken up. The second announcement on the part, it's already been made by everyone who's spoken here. Professor Soumitro has already spoken of the importance of being a part of IMFS. DRSO has always been a part of IMFS, and even in this IMFS, it will be in the second week in cities in India. DRSO calls upon all research scholars to organize, be a part of IMFS and also support. We might be in institutions where institutions in cities where IMFS is not taking place, but we can organize our fellow research scholars and students in our own organization and be a part. We can think about what we can do in the institutions and be a part of this movement. Or if there are, if we're living in cities that where IMFS is taking place, then we can be part of a much larger program. We can also get our fellow research scholars to participate in that. But the important thing is that we should not let this opportunity pass by us. We should be part of this movement. Thank you, Arya.
Hello, Argo.
Yes, Rajiv.
Can we include the demand to immediately stop the all fees hike throughout country?
Yes, this is included. This is included already. Akil told it. Yeah. Okay.
I'm missing. Okay.
Okay. So, of course, the National Council will decide on all the suggestions that will come, and will start the signature campaign on August 5th. So, hope everyone is participating with full strength, so that we can actually cross the target of 5,000 signatures within August 15th. And of course, we hope that all the scholars present here and hearing is participating in the March for Science, not only participating, but acting as an organizer, so that all the scholars are becoming the part of it. So thank you, Akil, for the announcements. And again, I thank Professor for his time and discussion. And I am thanking all the scholars who participated in the meeting and participated online. So we'll be closing the webinar, and let's embark for the March for Science and for the campaign. Let's march well for science and society. And with this note, let us stop here. Thank you.